Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, out of Voice Radio, and it's another day, and another Tag-Team-GX having been revealed. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It was only yesterday that we got a look at the English version of Celebi and Venusaur Tag-Team-GX. And would you believe it? We've got another one to take a gander at today. It is Mimikyu and Gengar. Now, we knew this was coming. We did do a prediction video on this quite a while ago now. I'll pop a link to that one in the description. But once again, it has been simultaneously revealed in both English and Japanese. And I don't know about you, but I think that makes our lives quite a bit easier. I did get a translation from the lovely David Hockman before the English version came out, but it turns out it wasn't needed. Once again, the artwork is done by the lovely Mitsuhiro Arita. I am digging these Tag-Team GXs more than basically any other artwork in years and years and years. Anyway, what does it do? Well, it's got 240 HP, which is low. The previous weakest in terms of HP Tag-Team GX we'd seen was Pikachu and Zekrom, which also had 240. So okay, it's no lower than them, but it's still pretty gosh darn low. Weakness to darkness is not good because Zoroark is literally the best Pokemon in the format. The resistance to fighting is good because Buzzwole is the other best Pokemon in the format. One of them at least. And the retreat cost of 2 is lower than the previous record Pikachu and Zekrom again, which had 3. But what does it actually do? Well, it is a Psychic type, so it's hitting weakness on Buzzwole, which is awesome. And it also means that you get things like Spell Tag, for instance, which is a great little thing that you can use. And let's not forget Malamar, but we'll talk about that in a moment. The first attack is awesome. The first attack here, ladies and gentlemen, for 2 Psychic Energy, does 50 damage for each trainer card in your opponent's hand. That's awesome. It's Poltergeist. And this is not the first time we've ever seen Poltergeist on a Gengar. The Gengar from Stormfront had Poltergeist, and this was good. Except that Gengar was 30 times, this is 50 times. This adds up incredibly quickly. If your opponent has got 3 trainer cards in hand, and when we say trainer card, we mean any trainer card. So that's an item card, think something like Electro Power. That is a tool card, something like Spell Tag. That is a stadium, think Shrine of Punishment, and it is a supporter, think Cynthia. All of those add 50 damage. So if you've got 3 of those in your opponent's hand, you're already doing 150. And that's enough to KO most of the relevant non-GXs at the moment. Think things like White Kyurem. They generally have 130. Then you add a Choice Band, you're up to 180. And the lower GXs, things like Blacephalon GX, which has 180, will be going down in 1 hit. Now, there's still a bunch you're not getting, but of course, I'm saying if there are 3 trainer cards in your opponent's hand, there might be 4. And if there's 4 trainer cards in your opponent's hand, then you're hitting up to 200, and everything from, say, Lycanroc down will get KO'd. And then with a Choice Band, you're up to 230, so that gets things like 230 HP and Gardevoir, and 210 HP, Zoroark. And then there's nothing to stop you having 6 trainer cards in your opponent's hand and taking out a Wailord. Now, to be Magikarp and Wailord, but you know, it's Wailord. Now, of course, that's not the most likely thing ever, but it absolutely could happen. Poltergeist has always been a good attack. It just needs a bit more sometimes. So there was a Miss Magius that came around a little while ago. It came around in Undaunted, and then we got an alternate art reprint in Call of Legend, and that had Poltergeist. And that was alright, it saw a little bit of play, but it only had 90 HP, so it was a little bit fragile. Sorry, 80 HP, which is even worse. And it needed energy acceleration, which we didn't really have so well at the time, and it was just a bit awkward, frankly. Now, we did have Vileplume at the time to block item cards to keep them in your opponent's hand, which was good, but it was a fringe deck at best. Well, this has a whole bunch of advantages. Firstly, Okay, it's got low HP for a Tag-Team-GX. I mean, it's lower than Metagross, which is a regular GX, albeit a Stage 2. But it's still 240. That's a lot of HP. And it's 50 times, which means you're hitting all of those key numbers super quickly. And if you want energy acceleration, ladies and gentlemen, we've got Malamar. Now, obviously, if you go into the expanded format, what you could do is just use Max Elixir to get the second energy on, and that's pretty sweet. But even then, 2 energy's not the worst one ever. But Malamar works beautifully here. And actually, this brings me to a point which was raised by the lovely David Hockman as I was chatting this through with him earlier. It doesn't actually have to be Mimikyu and Gengar Tag-Team-GX. Because, of course, Marshadow GX has got a very intriguing ability, which says you can use the attacks of any basic Pokemon in the discard pile. And the great thing about this is it gives up 2 prizes, whereas Mimikyu and Gengar being a Tag-Team-GX gives up 3. And now you're hitting a great weakness on Zoroark, so what you could do here is play 1 Mimikyu and Gengar, 1 Marshadow, and then actually take advantage of using either of them depending on the circumstance. Maybe chuck them into a Malamar deck, so you can use them as and when you need to. You can get both energy on in one go. But as with all attacks like this, you really want to stop your opponent playing item cards or trainers as a whole. And we got a few options. In the expanded format, you've got Trevenant. Leave Trevenant in the active, your opponent cannot play any item cards. And then you can retreat it using something like Floatstone or Mystery Energy. And then in theory, they've got lots of trainer cards in their hand. And then you smash. That would work. Obviously, I should also mention Seismitoad here because, you know, that also works in the expanded format. In the standard format, we've not got quite so much. What you can do is use a Sableye from Guardians Rising for 1 Darkness Energy, and we are mixing energy here, which is a bit of a pain. It stops your opponent playing supporter cards, which first of all is going to slow them down so they're not going to be able to play as many cards, and secondly, it means they can't play supporter cards and they end up clogging their hand. Your opponent could use something like an Ultra Ball to clear their hand of supporters, but then they won't have the supporters for when you take away the lock, so that puts them in an awkward position. But we do have Luxio here. Now, quick reminder that it evolves from Shinx, so you can, if you go second, get it going on your first turn. 1 colorless energy, so you're not mixing energy types. 30 damage stops your opponent playing item cards. And what's awesome here is you can evolve it into Luxray, which has free retreat. You can retreat it into Mimikyu and Gengar. That's quite nice. And then you can use Memory Energy or Shining Celebi to be able to use Luxio's attack while attacking with Luxray. And this could be something you do. Sit there with Luxray, which is a bulky Pokemon. It's also got an ability that reduces damage from attacks by 30. Soak a bit of damage, soak a bit of damage, soak a bit of damage, and then retreat into Mimikyu and Gengar to hit and take a big KO, and then repeat to fade. You don't have to. You can play this as a smasher in a Malamar deck, but your opponent can just do the thing where they just play all of their trainer cards as fast as they can. That alone could lose them the game if they play trainer cards wrong and play them too early, etc. But we've got options for item lock and as such if we want them. Now there's only one other attack. It's a GX attack, and it is a doozy. Your opponent cannot play any cards from their hand during their next turn for 1 psychic energy. This is phenomenal, because if they can't play any cards from their hand, that means that they cannot play any of their trainer cards, which means you've got a decent chance of getting a good Poltergeist off next turn. It is in fact the same effect as Alolan Golem's GX attack, although that also does 100 damage and is a lot more expensive. But as with all GX attacks, it does more Tag-Team-GX attacks when you add extra energy. If you've got at least 1 extra psychic energy, so a minimum of 2 psychic, both players draw until they have 7 cards in their hand. I know, right? If your opponent's trying to keep a low hand size, this is amazing. Firstly, it gets you to 7 cards in hand, which is really handy. It's like a better Lily, which is nice. Secondly, It stops your opponent playing cards next turn, which first of all is just going to slow them down and means that they're unlikely to actually be able to do very much. If they didn't have a KO last turn, they probably haven't got a KO this turn. They can attack, but it's literally draw one card and attack. That's their entire turn. So you're probably slowing them down, but you're also meaning they can't get rid of trainer cards which would lower your poltergeist damage, and then you're making them draw till they got 7 cards in hand, hopefully putting 1 or 2 extra trainer cards in their hand to do extra poltergeist damage. This is basically, for 2 energy, which is not much at all, by far the cheapest Tag-Team-GX attack we've seen so far. It gives you draw power, and almost guarantees you have a really big KO next turn, while also basically taking a turn off your opponent. Yes, they can still attack, but if you use this correctly, they won't have a good attack. It's wonderful. This is a really good Tag-Team-GX. It's very easy to not make this good. If you just use this as your main attacker, trying to use Poltergeist every turn with something like Malamar, your opponent can just play all their trainer cards and you're done. But dropping it at the perfect time as a tech in Malamar, playing it with something like Luxio, playing it and expanded with Trevenant, these are the things that make this card great. And make no mistake about it, this is a great card. If you play it incorrectly, it's easy to play around. But if you play it right as a tech, or in a deck which slows down your opponent by locking them out of supporters, etc., this is really good. I'm giving it 5 Wassies. I think it's that good. I think it can be a deck on its own if you build it to take advantage of Poltergeist, and I think it could be a nice little tech in Malamar decks, or basically anything that plays energy and a slight bit of acceleration. So you know what, ladies and gentlemen? As far as I'm concerned, that makes it a 5 Wassie card. But maybe you disagree with me, in which case, great news. There is a comment section, and I would heartily suggest you go and check it out. I would also suggest going nuts while asking you politely to be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at The Wassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassiePlays for some more Wassie action. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.